Welcome to the No Destination podcast, where every song has a story and every story finds its way into a song. I'm Dylan Kight, and this is where we trace the lines between the music and the moments that made it. This is episode 8, Good Trouble. Good Trouble is a song that is very near and dear to my heart. It was actually a song that started off as a Brilliant Mistake song. So we had put out the first record, Outsiders, and this is one of the first songs that really blurred the lines between those two creative periods. But when I brought it to the band, it was a noticeable step forward in my songwriting. It wasn't about a set of really personal events. It was more vignettes and a feeling that I had and the way that I thought somebody else might feel. Starting as a Brilliant Mistake, song took several different lives. Sonically, it first started as this rock song that was very straight ahead. When we brought it into the studio and Andy LeMaster and Andrew McFarland first heard it, it was really how to deconstruct the song. How do we get into the song? One of my favorite moments of the recording of the record, Late Bloomer in a Wallflower Suit, was during Good Trouble, because I played it acoustically in the control room, and we're like, yes, let's record this. And so what we would do is we would take some swings and see what worked arrangement-wise. And immediately, Andrew heard this very specific kind of intro rhythmically. And he told Andy and I, he was like, well, how about, we get some things from the kitchen? And it's more of a texture, is the way I interpret it for the beginning of the song. And we're like, sure, let's go for it. Anytime somebody has like a strong perspective or an idea, it's always worth trying, because they may hear something that you don't, that may really open up the song in a way that you're not ready for or that you didn't prepare for. And so he starts getting like cups and silverware and jars and tins. And so what you hear in the beginning of the recording is Andrew playing the dishes, as it were, that he had set up on his drum set. And it was such a nice sonic foundation. We could have just gone straight in, and it could have been a very straight ahead song, but it really made it more orchestrated and sound more like a record. And that was all Andrew. That's something he heard immediately. So the song has a much different feel. And honestly, this could have been the first song on the record. It was the first single that I had put out for Late Bloomer in a Wallflower Suit. And it wasn't until we had finished Worst of Me where we kind of figured out the placement of the track listing. But this was in the running for the first song, because it has this wonderful way of like easing you in sonically to the world. And then another one of my favorite parts, at least of recording the song, was Andy's backing vocals on the chorus are absolutely divine. I mean, it's one of my favorite backing vocals, and it's what pushes the chorus into the stratosphere, because it makes it really feel like it's reaching towards something. And that was all Andy. He did a phenomenal job. I remember when I first brought this song to Brilliant Mistakes, lyrically, it was like a head scratcher for them, because the Brilliant Mistakes songs were very personal, and not in a bad way, but I think I was still finding my groove as a songwriter again. And this song starts off with the line, I had a nosebleed in a matinee. I was uninvited to the parade downtown. And trouble will find you if you don't find it first. I shoveled my feet to darken my own door. And it was just this image of like, what would, like in my mind, what it reminds me of, and this is probably going to make you laugh, but it's almost like if Steely Dan had grown up on like indie rock versus jazz. That's kind of what it reminded me of. And for a long time, I hated Steely Dan. And now I've softened that position, but I still have some of that buried deep inside of me, I guess. But just that, again, it's this thing that happens in a couple of songs where it's this outsiderism, it's this misfit, it's this idea that like, I'm in a matinee. And the thing that I'm recalling from it is that I had a nosebleed, and I was also uninvited to the parade downtown. I mean, it's just conjuring up these feelings And this idea that, trouble will find you if you don't find it first, and I shoveled my feet to darken my own door, is that idea that what goes around comes around, but ultimately you're still the main protagonist or character in your own story. And the chorus is one of my favorite that I've ever written. It just really opens up in a really big way, but it still feels a part of the song, and it doesn't feel contrived. And, playing it live is a ton of fun. It's always great to see Robbie trying to recreate the things that Andrew did with basically kitchen items in a studio. And so he's hitting the hardware of his hi-hat stand. He's hitting, the top of the cymbal, whatever you call that spinner thing. And, it's always a trip. And the album release show, we were only supposed to do the intro, I think 2 cycles through. And I know that Robbie feels very self-conscious when we play the song because he's just literally hitting the metal on his drum set instead of the drums. And so I think I made it go twice as long, and we were all laughing on stage. I'm sure people were like, what is so funny? And that, folks, is the insider baseball and what was so funny about Good Trouble at the album release show. So anyway, the chorus opens up, and it has this way that makes me want to move. And again, I think that's in large part to Andy's backing vocals just kind of pushing through sonically. And the chorus is different lyrically than I would say the verses. So, for me, the first verse especially is kind of setting this stage where, you're getting the very vivid mental images of this person, right? That has a nosebleed, was uninvited to the parade. And then this idea in the chorus is, the lyrics are, I don't even care, lost amongst the beauty out here, searching for what's in a day, and how does a moment disappear? And so it's this idea that even though this person is going through this series of events in the first verse, they don't care because they understand that they're just lost in the beauty of life and in these little moments that comprise it, and searching for, what's in a day and what makes a moment disappear. And so it kind of goes back to this universal thing where you're not ostracized or on the outside looking in on the world. It's this acceptance that not only are you okay with it, but that you find beauty in it, and that you're searching through it because it gives you life, essentially, is the way that I look at it. And so coming out of that chorus, it goes right back into the next verse. The rain sets in, the streets look like broken glass, light colliding, then fading fast. There's a couple ahead, a million miles apart, a vacant space in the building and one in the heart. The second verse is more about creating this imagery of what it feels like to be on the outside looking in a relationship and what that looks like. And now it's more atmospheric. It's it's raining, it's nighttime. The way that rain looks on a street with lights and how it just kind of breaks apart, almost like broken glass, and how it fades really fast depending on cars going by. But then there's this idea that what I'm trying to bring into that verse is this idea of what that may feel like as a couple, obviously the narrator of the story or whoever is in charge of this, which is me, but it's the fact that someone's recognizing there's a couple ahead. And even though there's a couple and you can see that they're a couple, they're a million miles apart. And we've all seen that. And maybe it's just a small fight. Maybe someone didn't give them a bite of their dessert. Maybe someone's in the doghouse for something more trivial. But it's this idea that even though you can see a couple ahead and you know they're a couple, there still seems like there's this deep divide between them, not spatially, but emotionally. And so then tying this cityscape around a vacant space in the building and one in the heart. And this idea that you could tie it back to the couple or whatever. It was really just trying to draw that same imagery in the first verse, but give a different perspective on what that would be like to see in a relationship versus just a person. And the chorus repeats, I don't even care, lost amongst the beauty out here, searching for what's in a day, and how does a moment disappear? So again, there's this optimism that's radiating through the chorus, that even though things are what they are, that you're still out here, you're still trying to figure it out. And the bridge is interesting. For me, the bridge is invisible war flying inside. My heart beats out of time, which sounds like a haiku. And it's not. Define haiku right now. Just me and you. No one will know that you butchered it. I kid. But the way that the bridge, for me lyrically, informs the rest of the song and informed by the rest of the song, is it's more this like struggle that isn't really expressed in either the verses or the chorus. So I'm someone that's had tremendous anxiety in my life, and what that feels like, and the way that I've framed it up before is like an invisible war, because it's something that no one can see, right? The struggle that you may or may not be going through. And ultimately, how that feels sometimes is you're like flying on the inside, where it's like you don't have a center. You feel like you're kind of existing inside of your existence, and it's just a way to kind of describe like an out-of-body, in-body experience, if that makes any sense. How like you can feel so out of control having a panic attack, but still be very much on the inside, where somebody may see you walking down the street or at work or whatever, and they may not be able to tell anything if you're a good poker player. And then my heart beats out of time. I mean, that's just if you ever had a panic attack, sometimes it feels like your heart's beating out of its chest. And I've been that person. I've been the person where like I've had a panic attack and all of a sudden like my heart's racing. And I've gone to the emergency room before and been like, oh man, there's something very wrong with me. But no, I just meant in this moment where my heart was racing. And then you go to the hospital, you get into the emergency room, they hook you up to all this stuff and they go, nope, you're good. And you go, well, I don't feel good. This doesn't feel good. But, in that moment to get the clean bill of health that, you feel that. And it's been a long time since I went through that. And, I think anxiety is one of those things where it's a fleeting emotion. And there are seasons in life where it's around more often. And I've worked really hard in therapy. I've worked really hard as an adult to kind of recognize what some of those triggers are and how to identify that, and then kind of how to talk myself off that ledge. And it's a lot of breathing. It's a lot of being intentional. Sometimes it's walking outside and like changing perspective. Sometimes it's just calling somebody, even if they don't know you're going through a panic attack. Like that used to be one of my go-to moves, was to call somebody and talk about something completely different. And all of a sudden I'm involved in this like really in-depth conversation, and without the person knowing, I'm through the moment. I've gotten past it. And so it's worthwhile thought, like why does this part exist as the bridge? And because for better or for worse, the anxiety has actually made me a more empathetic person towards myself. It's made me more empathetic of other people. It's made me appreciate when I don't have anxiety. So it's made me appreciate more of the good stuff. But that was the duality that I wanted to kind of pull out of those two opposing sections in the song, of the verse and the chorus, was kind of introduce this new feeling of like, this invisible war flying inside, heart beating out of time, that, you can draw whatever you want from that. I mean, it might mean something completely different to you if you heard that. But then it goes right back to the chorus. I don't even care, lost amongst the beauty, out here, searching for what's in a day, and how does a moment disappear? So, if you were to think about that first scene of this outsider, this person that's in a movie theater and having a nosebleed, uninvited to the parade, catching up with you, or you finding it first, or you're darkening your own door, and now there's rain, and it's colliding, and it looks like broken glass, and there's a couple ahead, a million miles apart, a vacant space in the building, and one in the heart. And now you have this anxiety section, which trying to describe like a panic attack, essentially. And how you could open back up into that chorus where like, I don't even care, lost amongst the beauty out here, searching for what's in a day, and how does a moment disappear? Because at the end of those panic attacks, like a reprieve, I don't actually think I'm dying, or whatever it is, like whatever feeling of dread you may have, but it makes you almost like immediately appreciate just feeling normal. And so it's this series of vignettes, and the songs on Outsider were very much first person, very story driven, and there was clearly a different perspective on those songs. And so this song was really one of the first of that next batch that it was clear that I was maturing as a songwriter, that I was kind of figuring out a different way to say something similar. And sonically, it was way different. We'll talk in the next episode about Gardenia. And Good Trouble had a little bit of the same sonic conundrum, where Good Trouble and Gardenia were two songs that were of the bunch that Brilliant Mistakes was playing as we started to think through the recording of what would have been the second record. And I didn't hear what I wanted to hear. It wasn't working sonically in the room, which was very different from the first record on Outsiders. That, those sections, those parts, those songs came together in a way that was very intentional, cohesive, but like it just worked. And with Good Trouble and then Gardenia specifically, when we played it, it sounded good. And I think to most people, it would have been like, yeah, this is great. This is good. This is a good direction. It wasn't ultimately the direction I wanted the songs to be going in. So with Andrew, with Andy, we were able to really get to the core of these songs and what made them special. Like the example I gave of Andrew, who's a phenomenal musician, but played drums on the record, Late Bloomer in a Wallflower Suit. Him just having this idea of not playing drums on the first verse, like having these other little things that were rhythmic, but it's more creating a sonic foundation underneath the guitar and the vocals. And that's the kind of thing that I was really looking for sonically, moving away from the Outsiders record, was a more intentional kind of cinematic approach where it wasn't just four people in a room playing music. I love the way that sounds. There's very few times where that doesn't sound great, but for these songs they just sounded a little bit different. And maybe the distinction is it's not four people in a room, it's not just playing like a rock band would at a bar. The arrangements and the approach to the parts is fundamentally different, and I think you get that on Good Trouble. The other thing that I think makes this really great is there's a phenomenal rhythm guitar part in the chorus that is Michael Koetter playing like an absolutely dimed, like rocking edge of breakup guitar. And that doesn't sonically happen on a lot of the other tunes. Michael was and is a really important part of Late Bloomer and a Wallflower Suit. So Michael Koetter was the lead guitar player in Brilliant Mistakes. We had talked in a previous episode about how he had come in at the tail end of the recording of Outsiders and had really been pivotal on getting that record across the finish line. And Michael believed in these songs, Late Bloomer and Wallflower Suit songs. And Good Trouble is a great example on what he brought sonically to Late Bloomer and Wallflower Suit. That guitar part is really good. It's really simple, but the way that it sounds, the way that it's played, really made it open up. I have to give Michael a ton of credit, because when I was inside my own head saying things like, Good Trouble just doesn't sound the way it does in my head, or Gardenia doesn't sound the way that I think it should, he totally got it and was like, I agree. And you can feel like you're going crazy, and sometimes you are going crazy. Sometimes it's totally you that is the lone ranger in the situation, overthinking it. But the fact that I was kind of going through these conundrums sonically and not able to kind of figure it out or how to tell other people what to do, because that can happen sometimes. Sometimes if you have a really strong opinion, like, you could be the conductor saying, here's what I hear. I didn't really know what to tell people because I just know it didn't sound right. Michael was really pivotal on just following these songs to the truest part of the sound. He deserves a ton of credit for not only the record that you hear, but for it even getting to that point, because we very easily could have made a Brilliant Mistakes follow-up record and it would have sounded very similar, and I don't think it would have had the same results sonically and emotionally. And so I really appreciate Michael fighting for these songs and wanting to get to that conclusion with me. And he's a big reason why the record came to be. It would have been really easy when a band breaks up to spin your wheels, to overthink it, to kind of throw your hands up and, oh well, let's put another band together. And we tried. I mean, we definitely did. There was a couple different incarnations. But, it's sometimes harder to save a thing than it is just to start something new, if that makes sense. But Michael Koetter is the reason why the record got made. And so even in the liner notes, I say something very similar, but this record probably doesn't get made if it not for Michael, his friendship, and his belief in the songs, and just to keep going instead of like, well, let's just stop it all. Let's start a new band. And then when you start a new band, like everybody has different thoughts on songs or sonically, and then, you could feel like you're starting over. And Michael was really, really important to that first batch of 5 songs. Now, one of them's not on the record, Halcyon Days, but Pulaski, Reasons to Run, Gardenia, and Good Trouble all have Michael on them, and he's a very important part of the sonic landscape of the record. Definitely worth calling out. And I'm trying to, through these series of talking about the songs, kind of bring up people or the gear that informed it, because I do think I'm going to try to sum all this up in an episode later down the line where it's more coherent about my views on just the record, or instead of these song by song breakdowns. But it's important to me to call out these folks that made the record what it is. Even though it's buried inside of these songs, I'm going to try to do a better job of that, like summing this up at the very end. Now, we are nearing the end of this series. Late Bloomer and Wallflower Suit has 10 songs, so we're wrapping up episode 8, which is wild. But we've only got 2 more. Gardenia and then Gilded Age. That's how the record closes, which I can't believe I've stuck to something on social media longer than like 1 or 2 posts. So this is me giving myself the old thumbs up. I don't know. There you go. Just to give you a little bit of insight on to where this is going, there will be another episode about the last 2 songs. So there'll be an episode on Gardenia, which is probably one of my favorite stories of the whole record. There'll be one on Gilded Age, and that will conclude the record. Now, what's going to follow that is a special episode that will be the 11th, and that one's going to be about Laughing Heart, one of the songs that I will be putting out as a single. Laughing Heart was a song that was recorded during these sessions that almost made the record. It has all the things that I think make up a really good song that made the record. It just didn't fit the way that some of the other songs fit, and I think there are some other songs that are similar that just go a little bit further out in the sonic world. But Laughing Heart is a really important song because I think you get a better idea from not only lyrically, but the entire sonic world that was Late Bloomer and Wallflower Suit. So there'll be a whole episode where we go into Laughing Heart and maybe why it didn't make the record. But it's coming out as a standalone single on September 30th. So that's September 30th. Where that will come out, and there will also be a podcast episode where we talk about the song Laughing Heart. The other piece to this is in November, there will be I'm calling it a deluxe version. You can call it whatever you want to. It's not really a deluxe version, but it's just going to be more of a complete version of Late Bloomer and a Wallflower Suit. So there is a different mix of Pulaski that is more guitar forward, that doesn't have the keyboards. Halcyon Days, which was a song that was put out for a single before the record came out last summer, that I took down off streaming services, not because I don't love it. We still actually play it live, and I think it goes really well. But I was it was more of an issue where we had a very clear identity with all the cover art, and there was a couple singles that didn't match. Halcyon Days will also be on the deluxe version, and Laughing Heart will fold up into that deluxe version. I'm toying with the idea of putting out a couple acoustic versions as well to complete the deluxe thing, but that will exist on streaming platforms, and I'm trying to figure out a way on Bandcamp for all the folks that have bought a record, and I might do this too if you email me, but if you've bought a vinyl from me, I'll just send you the songs that aren't on there. There's a lot of things that are super awesome about the vinyl version. The one thing that we didn't get in there was a download sheet or a card, because I knew I wasn't going to put all those songs. I'm not sure how much you may or may not know about vinyl, but we tried to keep the record to 10 songs and under a certain minute mark, which is why Reasons to Run made the record and Laughing Heart didn't, because sonically keeping it under a certain amount of minutes per side, you're able to keep a higher level of fidelity. And yours truly was not prepared to shell out money for a double record. Maybe in the future, I would love to make a double record. I mean, everybody's made a double record, right? But trying to fit and make each side a certain length, that was definitely something we had to consider, and that's part of the reason why Halcyon Days and Laughing Heart didn't make the record, not because they didn't fit good or great, but because the vinyl only held a certain amount. So even if we had come up with a download code, I wanted the focus to be on the 10 songs, not on all of them. So, but anyway, I'm going to try to figure out a way, like if you purchased it, I'm going to put up like whatever on all my social media, like, hey, reach out to me. I will send you these extra 3 songs for free. I don't want people to feel like they've got to pay for them. So that's kind of where we're going as far as the Late Bloomer and Wallflower Suit story. So we'll have Gardenia, we'll have Gilded Age, we will talk about Laughing Heart, and we'll probably do a couple of retrospectives about just a podcast about the record. And I'm trying to maybe get some people that are on the record to join me in that conversation about what their experience was, because I think that would be really cool. And, you know, I imagine this series is going to run through like November or December. And when that's done, we're going to close the Late Bloomer and Wallflower Suit book story-wise. So then we'll talk more about current stuff and shows and what I hope to be the very beginning sessions for the next record, which is pretty much written, but we don't really want to talk about that yet. So lots of great stuff. Again, thank you so much to everybody who has supported the podcast, who shared the podcast. If this is your first time listening to one of my podcasts, please hit subscribe, share it with a friend. It goes a really, really long way for smaller artists like myself. The algorithm tries to give people what they think it wants, but we all know that the strongest piece of getting the word out there about a project like Late Bloomer and Wallflower Suit is word of mouth from people that you trust or people who have music tastes similar to yours. So subscribe, leave a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. All those things go a really long way to helping me show up organically and then appear in your friend's feed if you share it. Thanks so much, guys, and until next time.